Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable. And welcome to all you cool cats and kittens, a weekly program for Masons from around the world to get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Facebook page. So welcome to all of you watching live on Facebook or in the chat running alongside this YouTube video. So hello and good evening. Let's see. As for introductions, you know me. I'm John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And look at that. Full house tonight. So in no particular order, let's start with Mike the intern. Good seeing you again.
Good seeing you guys. Mike Hambrecht here. Current Junior Warden and Lodge Education Officer of Lakeshore Lodge, number 307 in Madison, Ohio. Good evening, everyone.
Excellent, excellent. Also, Jason Richards. Hello again.
Hello again. Jason Richards, past master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Hoorah. Now we have Robert
Rush
Johnson.
Chairman, darn glad to meet you.
Robert Johnson, good evening.
Good evening, John. You killed me with your intro.
You can thank Nathan Tweedy for that one. So.
Well, thanks, Nathan. You're the man. Robert Johnson, past Master Waukegan, sitting secretary at Space Novum. Thanks.
Good stuff. And last but not least, the one, the only, Juan Sepulveda. Good evening.
Good evening, brothers. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80. And the brother behind FreemasonryArt.com. Thank you, Nathan Tweedy. Good night.
All right. So definitely want to give a special shout out to all the patrons who've supported the show to keep this Masonic education going and for keeping it up for years to come. So thanks again for that. And I want to give an extra special shout out tonight to Laurel Lodge, number 651, from the jurisdiction of Pennsylvania. They decided to pull together and do a virtual watch party of TMR tonight. So for all of you brothers that are watching with us live, I'll toast to that. So good evening and cheers. So yes, dink. Good times. Man, this week has been amazing because here we are. We're on like week 3, 4, I don't know, of this COVID crisis. And I gotta say, it couldn't be better for Masonic education. Holy smokes. I was just telling the guys in the green room before the show, just like every night I've had something just fascinating to follow. And so we're glad to keep contributing to it, but holy smokes, I am so proud of all the brothers that have stepped up, shared presentations, from just individual observations all the way through organized Scottish Rite events. It's just been a fantastic time to be alive in virtual Masonry, and many of the brothers organizing this, I know they all have a sense of an enhanced spirit that there's something behind this, that there might be some great positive change that will occur as we get past this COVID-19 crisis. But until then, I'm enjoying the ride. This has just been utterly fantastic.
I have to say,
so what you're saying, John.
Go ahead.
So what you're saying, John, is that you're quarantined, but you're spending less time with your family.
Less time at lodge, less time with the family. Yeah, check. We're doing great.
All right, go ahead, Robert.
So what's been amazing actually is to really see Grand Lodges. There's one in particular that I know of, and I'm not entirely sure whether or not I should have gotten the notice that somebody leaked a Grand Lodge document to me. And so I can't say which Grand Lodge that is, but I will say there's a Grand Master out there who has essentially said, get your executive officers together and do your business virtually and make sure it's done. That way you have no problems. Like, granted, there are other ways to say that, like, you're allowed to just pay your bills as usual, Grand Lodge stamp, right? But what's awesome to hear and to see is these Grand Lodge officers who are out there being very progressive in this sense, and they're not scared of this slippery slope argument that a lot of other traditional brothers might be feeling like, oh, well, you can't allow them to do this. You just got to put everything on hold because you can't allow them to do this, because then when they come back, there'll be no incentive to actually come back to Lodge. And I just don't think that slippery slope argument works. The reason why you're seeing all this education right now is because guys miss going to Lodge, and it's the next best thing. But I agree with John. This is a step in the right direction to see these kind of study club meetings. It's just like this veil has been lifted all of a sudden. The extraordinary circumstance of this virus has caused a shove through the threshold of technology for Freemasonry. So, I mean, great.
Yeah, good
Wait.
times.
Let me get a casual smib.
Oh, yeah.
We got a shirt for that.
Yeah, that's super cool. So, in that vein, let's get to tonight's topic, which is one that Hammy's been working on while he's been taking care of his infirmed wife, and not because she has the Rona, but she had a recent ankle injury, so he's been out for a couple weeks taking care of her. But while he's been taking care of her, was cracking an interesting book. So what have you been reading?
I've been reading a book called The Priest and Freemason. It's about the Masonic author, Reverend Dr. George Oliver.
Reverend Dr. Brother George Oliver. Yes.
That's it, yes.
Got to get all the titles.
Yeah, oh yeah. And he's, working. He was writing back in the 1800s is when he did a lot of his work. So,
So let's hear about him.
Yeah. So to begin with, I'll kind of touch a little base here on where I began to look into George Oliver in the first place. Brother Chad Simpson, one of the first Masons to reach out to me from outside of my lodge in Ohio, to start telling me about some stuff. Recommended him as an author. He called him at the time, I think he said he was one of the original esoteric Freemason authors. And so I went digging, and I'm one of those kind of guys that, I can't just dig for the books and pick one and just read it. I have to pick the guy's work and go, okay, where's the first one he published? What's the first thing he wrote? And start there. And so I did. And the first book he wrote was actually called The Antiquities of Freemasonry, comprising illustrations of the 5 grand periods of Masonry, from the creation of the world to the dedication of Solomon's Temple. And, one of the things I'll get into the author here in a bit, but first, just let me touch base here on this. He really covers a lot of ground on wishful thinking of where Freemasonry would be great if it came from. The very fact that, in his work, it comes direct from God to Adam on down through to Masonry. And survives the great flood due to Noah and his sons.
That's fascinating right there. Yeah, because that's not unheard of, because let's see, Dr. Reverend Brother George Oliver was born in 1782. So this is well past the formative years of Freemasonry in the 1717, 1720 era. And when you read Anderson's constitutions, right, he's saying this comes right from the Noahide, and that Adam was a Mason. So that oral tradition, or more than oral, written tradition, carried through all the way through up to George Oliver's life.
Right. And that's where that's even fascinating there to me. It's well written and well discussed. He talks about I think it was the sons of Lux that he was calling them. Lux meaning light, obviously, in Latin. but that's who they considered themselves pre the flood. They weren't they weren't calling themselves Freemasons then. I wouldn't even know when they, according to his storyline, even because it's really not in there, where they might have actually started calling themselves that. But in any case, I mean, that's what got me started. His book for me was very inspiring. It may be, like I said, it may be a little fanciful, but his passion comes out in the work. So it doesn't matter that it's got some fiction to it. I mean, it's about the same as, in some ways, reading Born in Blood, It's got some fictional attributes to it, but yet it's still inspiring to believe the ideal of, that part of Masonry coming from the Templars, even.
Yeah, you're talking about the collective
uh,
works of George Oliver. Tends to have
right.
more of the mythology of Masonry embedded in that, and less as a historically accurate
Fact.
version. Yes.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because I mean, we
So-
know the Regis poem and all that likes to embellish the beautification of Freemasonry.
So,
Correct.
Mike,
Yeah.
a quick question for you is during the time of Oliver's life, just in the research that you've done so far, did he ever have to deal with people critiquing his work, or was he just seen? Because everything that I've read about George Oliver, which is very surface level, basically just says George Oliver was probably the most learned and poetic Masonic writer, in his sphere of influence, like, amongst his
Right.
peers or whatever. So, like, when we look at some other occult writers, 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th, we see guys who write quite a bit of mythology, quote unquote, and then get ripped apart by their contemporary scholars. Do you see that then, or was it kind of like that antiquarian thing where it was more about the story and the virtue, so that really wasn't the
Right.
concern?
And yeah, because I don't, yeah, actually, from what I could see, it doesn't seem that he was criticized a lot for his writing, at least not his earlier stuff. Maybe later along he was starting to get criticized, because I know there's some stuff that, as we could, go through him. I mean, he was actually at one point in 1840, he was asked to resign as Deputy Provincial Grand Master of Lincolnshire. But that didn't have to do with his works. It just had to do with his taking a stand in support of a brother Mason who was not in favor with that provincial Grand Master and another, I believe, another provincial Grand Master. So he had to resign as deputy. And when he did, he actually stepped out of being active in lodge as well. He continued to love Masonry and continued to write about it, stop being active.
So what I'm hearing is that there are sometimes politics in Masonry, and there may be people with higher authorities that just because they may not like you can kick you out of Masonry.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
It might have happened once or twice.
Right.
Look,
Yeah,
you
well,
are
he
nobody
didn't.
until you've been
Yeah.
kicked out or asked to step down.
Yes.
That's right. That's
I'll give a
right.
toast to Preston on that one.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things too that fascinates me about him, and he's not the first or the last to be this, but it's that fact of him being called the priest and a Freemason. He's actually, I mean, he's a priest of the Church of England, mind you, not of the Catholic Church, but he's not the first of the clergy to be a member of both the clergy and Freemasonry. But the way throughout his work that he has done, how he really tries hard to tie them together in that, and his life, which is, I mean, when you think about it in some aspects, um, at least for me, even it has been, Freemasonry strengthens my faith. It doesn't have anything to do with, whether or not what faith it is, just that it does strengthen it. And from, his work in that, you can definitely see that in both sides of his work, because he's written almost as many books about the Anglican Church and their history and antiquities as he has written about the history and antiquities of Freemasonry as well.
Right. So he was a pastor in the Church of England, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so again, he grew up in the UK, so that's where he spent
Yes.
his whole life. Right. Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually also a teacher for a grammar school there for at least 14 years. And I believe, and he was like a headmaster of that at the age of 21, which, I mean, I don't know, but to me, that sounds pretty early in life to become the headmaster of even a grammar school. So it says, to me, it says a lot. But I believe that school was also an hereditary line of educators.
Got you. Because he seemed to be well connected and just early, wise beyond his years, because he really just dove all in academically, but also, correct me if I'm wrong, he also got his degrees in Masonry when he was 18 or 19.
Yes, he did.
Through dispensation.
Yes, it was through dispensation. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, there was a newly formed Moderns Lodge, because, this is the time of the ancients and the moderns. And I want to say that it was a Moderns Lodge, and he wanted to be a member of this new lodge. And his dad already being a Mason and, also having quite a few connections there, was able to reach out, get dispensation. And I know that it even mentions, I think, that particular lodge had already had a past deputy provincial grand master in it that actually played a very influential part in mentoring George Oliver through most of his life. So, yeah, and that's, I think that's a great, great place there, for him to have gotten good mentoring that way, not only just from his father, but from that lodge. And I mean, that speaks a lot about even his father when you think about it, to be able to get that dispensation to get his son in at 18 when really it was 21, even then.
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
And now, then he also went off to school, obviously came back and he got to be the headmaster of that grammar school. And I'm trying to think, what else did he did some really other, I mean, he actually, one of his first books before he wrote Antiquities of Freemasonry was a book where he defends Christianity. It's actually, the title of it is A Vindication of the Fundamental Doctrines of Christianity Against the Attacks of Deism and Infidelity in a Series of Pastoral Addresses. And, when I first read that title, I was like, wait a minute. Are you trying to say that deists are bad and all this stuff? But no, I mean, it's, I from what I've read about that book, it was actually not that. It was just more about why Christianity needs to continue to focus on its own direction and allow the deists and, infidels to go their own way.
Yeah, that particular book, I am slightly familiar. As has always been the case with deism, is that it is oftentimes aggressive in its push against any and all organized religion. I would say that many deists are probably like of the thought in mind to just let people do their own thing, and you believe what you believe, and that's the idea of coexist. But no relation, Bob Johnson of Deism.com, he is and pushes for very radical deism, where quite often you'll see images of the coexist bumper sticker with the X through it, like no, none of this. It's really interesting stuff. And when we look at some of the earliest deist writings, I'll just plug the guy. Is some of the earliest writings are very aggressive toward it also, but this is when freedom of religion and thought is, of course, emerging for the first time without threat of you name it. Brother Tilton, past Grandmaster Tilton of Michigan, I believe, or Minnesota, actually has a great presentation on deism and the way deism operated and acted in those days. And he will be the first to tell you that there is a very huge difference, the fundamentalist ideas of deism of those formative years and current. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff. The fact that he preached an acceptance of the idea and just to let them go their way and rededicate yourself to the fundamentals of the faith was to his credit, I think, as a Freemason.
So he's a well-established priest with very active in that. He actually gets a lot of Masonic conferrals as well, right? He actually ends up getting things all the way up to what I believe like district, not district deputy, but district, like what was the Massachusetts order that or honor that got conferred on him? It's going to kill me because it was interesting because, again, about early Masonry here in the States. It's going to bug me. Oh, past Deputy Grand Master, conferred as an honorary title by the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. That's it. Again, I don't know if he ever visited Massachusetts, but it's his legacy that carried over amongst all these other provincial grand chaplains, provincial deputy grand master of the province of Lincolnshire. I mean, this dude got around. So what, as you were doing your research for this, Hammy, what was like one of the most like interesting facts that you either learned about or you thought that was a fascinating, fun fact about his life?
Let's see. I'm trying to think what was one of the best in the early stuff. Trying to remember here. I know that the one thing I did find, and it sounded like you might have been talking about it, was the fact that he was made an honorary deputy. I want to say deputy, not Grand Master of Massachusetts.
Right.
I don't remember where I read that now.
Past Deputy Grand Master conferred. That's so weird. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was up in Massachusetts, which wasn't really somewhere that he would spend a lot of time, at least in any of the stuff I'd read that he had, But he, the fact that he's, if I remember, he was also asked, for that position where he was asked to resign. I believe he was asked to take it on in the first place, to be the deputy provincial grand master. Now, I know that one thing that I did read in his stuff, he actually, I wouldn't say campaigned, worked very hard with that distinctly in mind to get that position as well. For over a year, he actually worked towards that. But even getting that, I mean, that's pretty, awesome to, get for even back then, because I know, in the U.S. I've talked about this with Ben Franklin, how fast he became to being a Grand Master of Pennsylvania. It's not the same thing over there, the way they do things in the UK, how you get through the titles and so forth. So to me, that's still pretty awesome that he was able to pull that off. Uh,
Another thing I did find that was fascinating was he was the first worshipful master of Apollo Lodge at Grimsby, and he had held that title for like 14 years.
yeah, I remember seeing that.
Was that
now.
the
Yes.
was that the academic lodge?
I mean, there is an academic
associated
lodge
from Oxford.
I believe so. If it's
I
the same,
thought that
same
was Apollo Lodge.
if it's the same Apollo Lodge I'm thinking of, there is one called Apollo Lodge, an academic lodge. But so it was newly established, and he was the first worshipful master and held the title for 14 years. Now, in that time frame, having that title for that long was not uncommon. So it sounds like, oh my gosh, could you imagine being master for 14 years? That was not uncommon in that time frame. But whew, if he wasn't busy enough writing books, preaching, and being
Right.
Mason extraordinaire, he's actually running a lodge for a decade and a half, basically.
Different lodge,
And
by
that's
the way.
other thing.
Yes. Oh, okay, good.
Oh,
Thanks
okay.
for fact checking that.
The other thing, though, is that he spent a lot of time not only just writing these books, but he wrote lots of articles that aren't, they aren't listed as his publications in the books. But many of them are actually, some of the books are actually combinations of his collected articles. But on top of that, he spoke a lot at a lot of different Masonic events and so forth. And then he also sermonized with Freemasonry in mind. So, because there's actually, several comments were made in some of the stuff I was reading where that's what he was doing.
There's a guy behind you.
Yeah, I know. That was that's Mango.
Nobody messes with the mango. By the way,
No,
if you
they
want to know
don't,
what we're
man.
talking about, you have to tune in to the YouTube video if you're watching. If you're listening on podcast. Love you.
Watch out for Mango.
So,
That's
interesting bit about George Oliver's lodge. This was Apollo Lodge number 362, which has since closed down. It was established in 1811. The lodge met at the Freemasons Tavern, Victoria Street in Great Grimsby, Lincolnshire, and moved to a Masonic hall in 1829. And their warrant was returned in 1834, and the lodge finally erased in 1835.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Having been formed in 1811, do we know, was that a Moderns that it was? I think that.
They got reunified in 1813. So
1814.
Right, that's why I was wondering that, how it got started. Yeah. But that's okay. I can look that up later. So
Jason's going to be on it.
Yeah.
I'm looking in the UK National Archives as we speak.
Okay. But yeah, that's the biggest thing, though, from everything I've read about what he has done is his contribution to, and this is actually the way they phrase it, the literature of Freemasonry, which to me actually points more towards what I said early on, the fictionalized side of it, because it's all good, and really, the stuff I've read, even because recently I'd started reading the one that's the origins of the Royal Arch, because when I first started to read that, I thought, oh, maybe he's actually telling the actual history of it. No, he takes it back to biblical times and so forth again, and
Gotcha.
it's like, okay, but again, enjoyable, inspirational in the even though it's fictional, it's the idea of thinking that way that says to me, you know what, that just because it's wrong doesn't mean it's bad. So it's just probably the exact opposite of a lot of people sit there and tell me about when I started reading the Lost Keys of Freemasonry, and they're saying, hey, he wrote that and he wasn't even a Freemason yet. Yeah.
Yes, but it's still entertaining.
Yeah. So I don't really
Mike,
have much more.
I was gonna ask. One of the things that I noticed about all of the titles and what you're talking about, in terms of how he is being fictional or being, beautifying
Mhm.
the mythologies. The way he really ties it all back to Christianity is Christianity being this
Yes.
dominant force at the time.
Right.
And arguably under attack in some circles. I'm sure it's probably like it's a testament to how much somebody would love the craft, right? Because we have a need to make everything linear. It's like I think the Quakers during the first period of people coming to the United States are the people who actually assigned a timeline to the Bible from beginning to end, right? Because it's needed to literalize everything. And so to make these connections that you see with George Oliver tying everything back, he's making this intense argument to legitimize the craft to anybody who isn't, doesn't hold favor with them, by tying it to something that he would say arguably goes back to the quote unquote beginning. Um, it's kind of like, I think, Matthew, the book of Matthew, one of you guys might know better. Matthew gives a genealogy of Jesus, right? And that's the one that ties him all the way back to Adam, I think. But it's the same idea, because we're always looking for an origin, because the older it is, the more legitimate it must be to a certain point. I just find it fascinating, not that he would do that, but that he cared so much about it to do that.
Hey, Robert.
Right.
It's actually Luke's genealogy that traces it back to Adam. Matthew's genealogy traces Jesus' lineage back to Abraham.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I'm helping.
Yeah, I agree with you there, RJ. Especially, when you actually look at the Apology for Freemasons too, the book that he wrote there. That one's where he's trying to even make sure that everybody understands that Freemasonry is compatible with most religions, and especially Christianity.
Well, I'm glad there's no debate about that now, over 150 years later, that no one thinks that Freemasons are devil worshippers, because that would be embarrassing if it was solved 150 odd years ago.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say an apology for Freemasonry. Anybody who's listening who is not familiar, when somebody writes an apology for whatever in those times, it was not like, hey, we're Freemasons, we're sorry that we're Freemasons. It was more like, we're Freemasons, this is why we're awesome, and you should get off our back.
Yeah,
it's called apologetics.
Right, the apologists. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is in defense of. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
Another thing I found kind of sad in the biography of Reverend Dr. Brother George Oliver, that's what I'm going to refer to him as forevermore, was, late in his life, 1854, so he would be about 70, about 72 years old at this point. His voice began to fail, and he just went into hermit mode and just passed away the rest of his life, basically in seclusion. And so it was it's an interesting whimper at the end of his life for a guy who had contributed so much to the literary books of Freemasonry, of the Church of England, and all his orations. It's kind of sad when you see things kind of fade out at the tail end there.
What year?
Not end on a high note.
What year did that start, John?
He lost his voice in 1854, but then lived until 1867. So
That's wild. So it's showing actually that he wrote a work, Ye Bird of Grimm, about 1866, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, seven of his Masonic works after that point.
yeah, with no voice.
Yeah, Origin
Yeah.
of the Royal Arch of Masonry, the Pythagorean Triangle, or the Science of Numbers, 1875. Oh, this is interesting, and especially from him. 1875, he authors Discrepancies of Freemasonry.
Like his last published work. Holy smokes.
his last published work. Here might be some discrepancies of things I may have said.
My bad.
My bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know
Well,
what's in that book.
The one book that I would really like to get my hands on, because the way it comes across is that it should be quite entertaining, is the Book of the Lodge, or the Officer's Manual, and it's actually a century of aphorisms. That's the whole book is pretty much aphorisms, not anything about how to be a master of the lodge, or what you should do. It's just all aphorisms.
Yeah, the good news is, because he died in the mid 1800s, that means all of his works are technically public domain. So looking up on our favorite site, Internet Archive, they do have the Discrepancies of Freemasonry up there, and let's see here, the subtitle of that book is kind of fascinating. It's the Discrepancies of Freemasonry examined during a week's gossip with the late celebrated Brother Gilks and other eminent Masons on sundry obscure and difficult passages in the ordinary lodge lectures, which, although open questions in Grand Lodge, constitute a source of doubt and perplexity in the craft. So that's what that book is about.
I mean, I feel like that book could be written at any given weekend.
Yeah, right. I kind of doubt what they said there.
Yeah, I
we
mean,
could write a whole new version of it.
the Ordinary Lodge lectures. All right, so the first thing that jumps out to me, and I think many people, was like when they discovered the guy who is said to have yelled out "Eureka" definitely did not yell out "Eureka."
Right, exactly.
Right? It's
Is that
just
Archimedes?
all the
Archimedes is
yeah.
the one, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But we can't change it. We can't go back and correct it. Waterford, waterfall.
Yeah, but it was close though, because he screamed out urethra. It was a new soap.
Oh gosh,
Classy.
classic.
No, I'm not going there.
You almost did.
I thought about it.
This episode is going to be sponsored by Manscaped and Squatch.
Yes.
Oh.
All right.
Now, not that it
Remember,
really
don't just
matters,
wash your hands.
Just your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, I
don't
will
wash
say
just your
this,
hands.
because not that it matters, I actually own an 1870 copy of the Symbol of Glory. So,
Oh,
which
that's
is one of his
Really?
works.
that he
Yeah,
published in
Wow.
1850. Wow.
yeah. So,
Nice.
yep. Yeah. I don't have any of the others, but I have that one. So,
Mm-hmm. All right.
because yes, I'm a bibliophile.
Well, that's awesome. So, anything else you want to close with, there, brother Mike? Just
Other
on your
than,
general observations on his life and his contributions to Masonry.
No, other than I would really like to say, I recommend highly reading some of these books to anyone who's interested in Freemasonry in general. Anyway, read them. I mean, again, just because there might be a fictional account of our histories and the antiquities, read them. That way, you'll understand where he was coming from. I mean, it's over a century ago that actually not even quite a century yet. That he was writing this. So, think about it. 100 years ago, this is how he felt about it, and how others, because they actually read it and agreed, probably felt about it as well. So why did we change? What did we know that's different now? And so forth. But it gives you a better understanding of your own craft.
Well, thank you for doing that research, and it's good to see you back.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start wrapping things up with Shameless Plug's final thoughts, starting with Jason Richards. Good evening.
Good evening. Wow, Mike, thanks so much for doing the yeoman's work on the research. George Oliver is a figure in Freemasonry I had never heard of before we started researching for the show, and it's just so interesting to get to know different Masons and Masonic authors who you haven't heard of every other week. Like, did you know George Washington was a Freemason? Like,
whoa,
yes.
whoa. Really?
Yes, we did. Oh, you didn't know that?
We should do an episode on that. Have we done a
totally
George Washington episode?
We have not.
We'll save it for 300. Don't worry about that.
Oh, well, we could do that.
Yeah, we'll get Mark Tabbert on. Yeah, no, it's always fascinating to hear about little known Masonic authors who really just wrote a ton. In defense of the craft as an apologist. So I'm loving the slant that our show's been taking with diving into the old charges as well as some of the early Masonic authors. So keep it coming, because I'm having a blast.
Good stuff. All right. So thank you.
Or for shameless plugs. Now that we have COVID-19 ravaging the world, I'm actually speaking more than than I was prior. So I'm doing a bunch of virtual presentations. Next Wednesday, I'm going to be giving an introduction to Masonic research. So Masonic Research 101 at the Kansas Lodge of Research open meeting on Wednesday. And then later this month, on April 29th, I'm going to be giving a lecture at Endeavour Lodge in Australia. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be my first time in the other of our two virtual lodges here in the world.
Awesome. Well, good on you. See you then. So I know I want to try and make a couple of those. So that's awesome. Next up, we have Robert Johnson.
Oh, hey. Mike, thanks for doing the research on George Oliver. Before you had mentioned him, I didn't know much about him at all, other than knowing some of his works about deism that had been mentioned on different, deist books and things. So thank you for doing that. I'm all out of drink, but if I had some left, I would, give a toast to all of our brothers out there who are literally making Masonry happen with these online WebExes, Zooms, and Google Hangouts. So you guys are amazing. Like Jason, I have had to pivot a little bit with some of the Masonic talks that I'm be giving. 3 or 4 of them got canceled right away. The next one I've got, I am doing an Esoterics 101 virtual, which will be a Skype WebEx Zoom meeting for Brother Matt Parker. And I just want to thank everybody for continuing to make this happen. I'll be sharing it tomorrow. Brother Mike Halloran, past Grandmaster, sent me a poster he put together, and I'll be sharing that out tomorrow for everywhere, so keep an eye out for that. Spread it around. Yeah, it's pretty neat. And just something interesting. Well, you know what? I'll save that for another time. But anyway, thanks for watching the show and hanging out with us tonight.
Well, now I'm curious, but I'll wait till next time.
Yeah, just wait till next time. That's fine.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Brother Juan.
Yeah, I'll echo Robert's sentiment. Mike, thank you so much for the research, and thank you for the brothers for always tuning in. We had quite a large number of people watching live, and we appreciate you tuning in and listening to our conversations. We hope that you get something out of it. Entertainment is a part of it, of course, but the education that comes from doing these research and giving these presentations is definitely priceless. So thank you so very much for tuning in week after week.
Infotainment.
Infotainment. And now you have more time. Well, maybe.
Maybe.
And if you do, spend some time with us. Those who watch live, for those of you who are listening to the podcast, you may not know this, but if you watch it live on YouTube Thursday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can participate live on our YouTube chat, and a lot of stuff happens in there. So if you've been listening for a lot of years and you've never joined us live, like Brother Nathan did tonight, I encourage you to do so. And shameless plug, brothers, I know that a lot of you are thirsty for more Masonic interaction, more Masonic knowledge. And for a few years, I've been working on a project called Applied Freemasonry, which takes advantage of the technology that we have access to. So you can be a part of the Applied Freemasonry program. Specifically, I have a course called Strong Foundation, and it goes through the practical application of some of the lessons of Masonry into your personal life. So this is not just a 10,000-foot view of the tools and go figure it out on yourself. Some deep dive discussions about how our tools can be used in today's society. So if you feel that you can gain any advantage from learning how to divide your time in an appropriate manner, how to keep your passions within due bounds, how to expand your knowledge with the Masonic lessons, go check out our Strong Foundation course by going to appliedfreemasonry.com. Thank you, brothers.
Okay, let's see. Next up, Mike the intern. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. So, again, George Oliver did quite a few good works out there on Freemasonry because he had a great passion for it. He also did quite a few works on the history and antiquities of the Anglican Church because he actually, again, same thing, had quite a passion for it. And it all shows in all his works how great all this really is. So, if you're interested, read him. If you guys have some authors you think we should look into more, other than say Albert Pike for a good example, let us know. I mean, I'll be glad to look into someone if you have an idea of somebody else I should look at. I'd appreciate that. It also gives me some more books to read that I haven't even thought of, I'm sure. So, thanks for watching and have a good evening.
All right. Okay, so last up, hey, I wanted to give a special shout out to those in the YouTube chat giving super chat. So I want to especially thank that cool cat, Nathan Tweedy, for finally being able to watch us live. His other commitments have kind of taken him away, but he was able to join us tonight, so it was good to see him in the YouTube chat. As always, to Joe Martinez for his hashtag FreeJoeExotic and hashtag Woot for online masonry. Yes, Joe has been very active, as I have, on all of the education. We've just been soaking it all up, and I hope you all brothers continue to do so as well. And also a very special thank you to Amadou 2002, who has been back here week after week supporting the show. And so it's great to see him and all the brothers and all of the conversation in the chat windows, both on YouTube and on Facebook. So keep it up, guys. It's good seeing you. Let's keep this brotherhood alive while we push through this COVID-19 thing, and let's keep seeing you week after week. So keep it up. With that, it's been fascinating. I also want to say to Brother Mike, thank you for doing the research on this awesome Reverend Dr. Brother, and again, one that I had not heard of until you mentioned him. So you've certainly inspired really the whole TMR crew to go off and do some research into this fascinating individual who left his mark in Freemasonry. So definitely go check out some of his books. And we'll see you next week. So that's all we got. I want to say thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.
Wow.